So I think some of these kind of future what could be or what some of the files indicate will be videos for Fallout 76 are by far my most fun to make. I think just speculating and being hopeful that we'll get some really awesome DLC is cool, and I enjoy it. What I'm going to be doing in this video is basically going through some of the files that were added to your computer when Fallout 76 was downloaded for the PC beta. And within those files, a number of things are labeled as post. Post being post-launch, aka DLC. There's a variety of things in here that do seem to genuinely indicate DLC. This is by kind of cross-matching and corresponding entries in other files that also go along with this. And after actually going through these files, it definitely seems like we have a decent idea of what some of these DLCs will add. And just as a quick reminder, all the DLC for Fallout 76 is going to be totally free. And as a friendly disclaimer, you can actually preload Fallout 76 on Xbox One right now and delete the beta files. That didn't really warrant its own video, but I figure I'd share it with you anyway in case you missed the news. So one of the first things we find throughout these files are those pertaining to the vaults. I actually made an entire video looking at other datamine files from other locations indicating that the vaults will likely be DLC. But even beyond that, if you actually go to some of them in-game, they do have like minimalistic backstory and lore established, and some of them do have a way, or seemingly a way, that they would be accessed later on. And I'm going to speculate that based on how much content we actually have within the files pertaining to the vaults, it'll definitely be one of the earlier DLCs. So we have found in the files are vault suits for all of the major vaults. That being 94, 96, 63, and even Vault-Tec University. From some of those other files, we also found out that backpacks may be a component of these vaults, and there's definitely some more evidence of that here. You can find a variety of different references to colored backpacks, some of these being vault-themed backpacks, other ones just being standard backpacks, and one that there's only one entry for, but sounds kind of interesting, is a framed backpack. So there's not really much context as to what that could correspond to, but one thing I'm speculating is maybe it could be a power armor backpack, like actually attaching to the power armor frame. But again, that's pure speculation. We have no idea if any of this will even make it into the game. Without spoiling too much, basically the premise of vaults in this game is they'll seemingly act as dungeons. One of the vaults had an experiment going on that involved animals, and the animals get free. In these files, we find that there's actually going to be a bunch of different outbreak kind of sequences or things to do pertaining to an outbreak. Like one of them had an outbreak of mutant hounds that you have to take down, or death claws, etc. Something that seems to correspond to that is actually there's going to be different syringer barrels that you can collect as a result of that, basically crafting that specific barrel based off what you actually find in that vault, or maybe as a result of that quest. One that is actually named is the Frenzy Syringer Barrel. That's going to make it so creatures frenzy for 2 minutes. So based off this, I again really do think that the vaults are going to be one of the first major DLCs. I imagine with this you'll see a ton of other paint jobs. We've actually found in some of the other files a bunch of vault paints for various things, whether it be actual things you could place in your settlement, power armor, and armor paint jobs. This is something we saw in Fallout 4's Creation Club, so I could see it being a whole thing with Fallout 76. I also could imagine it being one of the first DLCs because it would probably draw a lot of attention because people know what the vaults are. It's pretty synonymous with the Fallout franchise. Something else I've talked about in a different video involving hidden or data mined files are lunchboxes. On the Atomic Shop, you could find these 3 image sets. These look very similar to the lunchboxes we do have in Fallout Shelter, which basically function as loot boxes. You buy them for a certain amount of money, and then when you open it, you get some item at random that you can use in-game. So for Fallout 76, that would be very controversial. It's been said that Fallout 76 will not feature loot boxes, but even beyond that, the Atomic Shop is meant to stay cosmetic. Well, through these new files, I've actually found way more referencing some of these lunchboxes. And I want to be totally clear here, some of this may end up being cut content. These lunchboxes very realistically could never make it in-game. Just because we have the files for them doesn't mean Bethesda will actually go through with making these, and that actually applies to everything said in this video. The lunchbox entry itself has some keywords that seem to indicate it's going to be an unsellable item, so it's not like you could buy these with real world money and then sell them to vendors, but also not to other players, and even beyond that, it's going to be usable as a chem. The description being, start the party, open near your friends so everyone can enjoy. There may be different tiers for these lunchboxes. I actually found 2 explosion files, like the special effects file for that. One of them was for a typical lunchbox, another one was actually for a rare lunchbox. Both of those having the ATX prefix, which is what Bethesda's been using for the Atomic Shop. And it seems like the bonuses you might get from these lunchboxes will be known as lunchbox party favors. And there's various different things in this. There's entries for certain things that will actually reduce your thirst or hunger, making it so you and seemingly your party won't be thirsty or hungry. Some are labeled as actually giving you bonus damage against certain NPCs. It's actually divvied up into the different groups, so you can get bonus damage to animals, to robots, to super mutants. But there's also some with the file heading of old ATX, seemingly indicating that maybe these are outdated outdated won't actually be used. Under those categories, you could find entries that reference actually being able to get bobbleheads, magazines, mutations, perks, and different jump height from these also. So what I'm speculating is, maybe at one point in the development cycle, Bethesda intended these lunchboxes to work as traditional loot crates. You can get all of those different things I just mentioned, but they realized, hey, maybe that's not the best idea for PR reasons, and they ended up cutting that. And that's why it actually says old ATX before things like mutations, bobbleheads, magazines. Some of the things that do still have entries though are damage to NPCs, carry capacity, XP bonuses, certain rad resist bonuses. So I don't really know, those certainly don't seem cosmetic, but as I mentioned in videos past and even earlier in this video, this could just be something that got cut from the game. Bethesda thought about adding these effectively loot boxes as they seem, but in the end decided not to, and that's how they stand right now internally. The files are just still in the game. What I'm saying is, don't take this information and start freaking out. It very realistically could end up being nothing. I also wouldn't be shocked if we get a Raider kind of DLC at some point. There's entries for all these different power armor paint jobs. We actually have the textures for these, but we can't see them applied just yet. That being the Black Rider power armor, the War Rider power armor, the Pale Rider power armor, and the Plague Rider power armor. I'm just kind of speculating that those will be Raider themed, but they also just sound very Raidery. These have Atomic Shop listings, and we've actually seen again those files, but even beyond that, there's also leveled list entries for some of these. There's a lot of different robot files in here. I wouldn't be surprised at some point if robot crafting actually makes a return. This of course was added by the first DLC for Fallout 4, and a lot of the actual file entries are here for that, to actually craft a robot and have all the different various options you had in that past game. But even beyond that, there's actually a little bit more for the robots here. There's listings for RoboBrain, SentryBot, Protectron, and Assaultron Liberators. So basically Liberators were dropped before the Great War started and apparently produced in the region also. They're meant to help the communists during their invasion. So I wouldn't be shocked if we have a DLC actually maybe using this, a communist themed DLC, or maybe a communist versus freedom DLC. There's also files for things called the Presidential Power Suit, which actually increases your charisma, and it's not labeled as Atomic Shop for this one. To go along with that, there's also a Presidential Gauss Rifle that you can craft, probably going to be a skin for the Gauss Rifle, or maybe a custom variant. And finally, a Presidential T60 paint. I could see all these different things coming together to make a pretty interesting event. The compound bow was something I mentioned in my weapons video, and based off what we're seeing here, it certainly seems like the compound bow is going to be a DLC option. I did some research and I couldn't find anyone talking about finding it in-game yet. As one of the kind of problems with a lot of these files, you can't really tell which is actually integrated and what's not integrated. Like there's certainly some things with this post prefix that are in-game right now, they just still have the post prefix, and a ton of other stuff that is obviously carried over from Fallout 4. It seems like we could be getting more instruments in the future. I found entries for a cello, flute, harmonica, trumpet, and violin. This is another one that's kind of hard to tell. I did some Googling. I couldn't find any instances where people found these in game, so I just have to assume the post heading is true on these. And one that's pretty interesting, something that seems like it might have been cut from the base game, but could be coming back in the form of DLC, is Scorched variants of the Super Mutants. If you explore to some of the outer regions of the map, especially around some of those fissure zones, you could actually find Scorched variants of, well, not Scorched, like Scorched Gulpers or Scorched Wild Mongrels, but also in these files we do find Scorched Super Mutants and Scorched Super Mutant Behemoths. That'd be another really cool thing to do as kind of an event DLC, have the Scorched infect a bunch of various things, and you have to collectively, maybe with a bunch of people from the server, take them down and remove whatever is infecting them. So yeah, that's a bunch of the stuff I found while looking through the files for Fallout 76. I again think a lot of this will indicate future DLC, so I'm putting in my predictions now. We're going to see a Vault DLC very early on, then later we'll see a Raider DLC, and then maybe also at some point in the near future a Communism versus Freedom DLC. Again, this is all speculation. All of this could just be old content that never ends up in the game, but based on how many times we're seeing a lot of these files, it certainly seems like at least some of this will come to fruition. So that's pretty much it for the Fallout part of this video, but otherwise I do have today's psychology fun fact of the day, and what that's going to be on is the psychology of attraction. Yes, a very juicy topic. There's a lot of preconceived notions in this field, what makes two people really like each other and what doesn't. This is likely due to the fact that movies play a pretty big role in shaping how we view this, and movies don't always actually show attraction right. For example, you may have heard of being hard to get, basically just kind of pushing whoever's interested in you away, even if you are kind of interested in them, because that's going to make them even more interested. In reality, studies show this isn't a real thing, that playing hard to get doesn't lead to more attraction or better relationships. And in reality, like most things in life, the best answer is a middle ground. So what research shows is people have the most success when you're not totally easy to get and just fully embracing the other person's attraction right off the bat, but rather that you actually take a middle ground, not being overly selective, but also not being overly non-selective. There's also the idea that opposites attract. One person fills half the role, the other person fills the other half the role. So together you create a complementary picture where you together actually fill a greater role than you alone. That's actually another one that isn't really true or empirically backed. What people actually prefer is others who reciprocate the same feelings that they have. Whether that just be attraction, people tend to like people that are attracted to them, or even just interest in similar things. The reality is a more accurate statement would be similarities attract, not opposites. So 2 simple ones today, but either way, that's pretty much going to wrap it up for this video. As always, again, I thank you all for watching. I do hope you enjoyed, and I hope to see you all next time. Later.